Hey Simsbury, Wendy Maxdudas here, current First Selectman, and I want to welcome you to After Hours with Wendy and Friends. As I mentioned on a couple episodes ago, this is a long-planned reboot of Office Hours with John Hampton. So we're going to do interviews with people of interest, and we're hoping to take this show on the road and talk to people out in the town and on the streets of Simsbury and some of your neighbors. So tonight, I have my very special friend, our newish town manager, Mark Nelson here, who's giving up some of his time in town hall to meet with us here today. Nice to have you, Mark.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
So Mark and I see each other quite a bit, and we talk quite a bit at our board meetings, but I thought it would be nice for the town to get to know Mark a little bit, as we've all been able to do.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I've been dining out on being your new town manager for a long time now. And lately, some people in the community have said, how long are you going to say you're the new town manager? And I said, I think I'm going to say I'm the new town manager for maybe three and a half years. I'll see if I can just milk it a little bit longer. But it's been a good just over a year now. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I wanted to say, so you came in, our first town manager, when we switched to the form of government in 2017,
right,
who resigned in May of 23.
23.
She left in 23.
Right.
And then we had an interim for 6 months.
My good friend Lee Erdman.
Yep. He was a great addition to the town hall.
Yeah.
And then you were hired by the last Board of Selectmen,
yeah,
and you've been here since January 2024.
Wow, has it been that long already?
I know.
Just
it's
over
shocking.
a year? Wow.
It's shocking.
It's been fun.
So so tell me.
Well, I have to. I got to tell you a quick story about my predecessor, Lee Erdman. So Lee was the chief operating officer in Hartford. Years ago, when I worked there, back in the early days of my career, I was the tax collector in Hartford. And Lee was the chief operating officer for the then mayor, Eddie Perez, who was the first strong mayor after a charter change in the city of Hartford. And Mayor Perez became the first strong mayor. And one of the first things he needed to do was get a new tax collector, because it had been a bit of a mess let's just call it a mess in the Hartford tax office. And Lee interviewed me. I was one of a host of candidates, and he was instrumental in hiring me. And Mayor Perez calls me up to his office as part of the interview process. I'm kind of the guy, and he wants to meet the mayor. Lee walks me in, and Mayor Perez says, I only have one question for you. I said, what's that, Mayor? He says, you know anybody in Hartford? And I said, no, Mayor, I don't know anybody in Hartford. I was living in New Jersey at the time. And he said, you're hired. And that was that. So anyway, fast forward all these years later, when Simsbury put out the search for a new town manager, and I looked at it and I saw that your interim was Lee Erdman. And we talk about going full circle. It kind of started my public service with him. And of course, for those that don't know, Lee has been in town management, I think, in maybe 8 or 9.
Weathersfield for 30 years. Or
Hartford, and and he's one of my mentors. And so it was really great to follow after Lee. And if he's watching, hi Lee, you did a great job.
Yeah, he was good. He came in when we needed him, but we were happy to get a permanent town manager who's no longer new.
Glad to be right.
You want me to take that off of there?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, how's the town doing?
Really well. We just, as you know, just finished putting our final touches on the budget, which is going to its second public hearing. When is that? The 22nd?
Yep.
So everybody watching, April 22nd at the library, I believe, again. Isn't that one?
Yep.
So that's the second and hopefully final public hearing before it goes to referendum in May. And so it's the second budget I've worked on with you and the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. And I think it's, I know it's better because the tax increase is a lot lower. So, and your board did a lot, and so did the Board of Finance and the Board of Education. So I think I'm relieved that the budget process is winding down, because it's been a long 3 or 4 months. It seems every year the budget work gets longer and harder, as you know. So I'm looking forward to getting back to some of the other things that are not budget related, and looking forward to favorable result when it gets out there.
So before we get to town stuff, looking ahead, we're already hearing it's going to be another tough budget next year.
Yeah, I'm actually more worried about next year and the out years, and I know you are, and we've had a lot of good conversations with folks throughout town government about the long-term strategic plan, and I think that one of the most important things that we're going to be working on this summer is the capital planning, which is where the big money is, obviously schools and roads and infrastructure and buildings, and these are the things that really I struggle with, because operationally we're in great shape. We've got a terrific team. And on a day-by-day basis, I think the town's running really, really well. But I think what somebody asked me, it might have been charter revision, what keeps me up at night, and it's the capital planning. I think
Really?
and the future and the out years, because every year you delay a project. You delay it because of funding, obviously. Most of the time it's funding related. But in that year, the price of the project has gone up 8, 9.
Right.
During COVID, you saw price increases on municipal projects of 20%. It's just the cost of waiting has to be weighed against the cost of doing it now. Those are tough calls.
Well, we've had that happen on a couple of our projects.
Really
we've had
difficult.
to come back and ask the board for
more
money. And that leads into, talking about, funding and things like that. We're also going to be keeping our eye on what's happening at the federal and the state level, right? Of
Right.
making sure we get money trickling down to us.
Right.
So we don't have to hit the taxpayers.
It is. It's one of the things, as you know, we're doing in the town manager's office. We've transitioned the deputy town manager into a role that's focused more on grants
Yep.
and less on personnel. That's because we've now created a human resources department in town with your help. And so I think one of the things that's going to be front and center for us is monitoring the federal situation, right? And then, of course, that trickles down to the state in a big way, and then to all of our 169 towns and cities across the state. So it's a big, I think the turbulence that you see in Washington is coming our way. It's some call it a tsunami. And we have got to stay extra vigilant and keep an eye on what's happening.
Yeah, and speaking even supply chain costs, they've gone up through COVID. It could happen, continue to go up again. So we'll have to play it. And we were lucky when we talked about capital. We did get $7.5 million during COVID that we got to use for capital. So at least we got ahead on a few things, right?
Yeah.
And so speaking of that, a couple projects that are coming to fruition right now is our Flower Bridge.
I'm so excited about that. It's one of my favorite projects. I know that, and I got to tell you, and maybe you know this already. I don't know that if we hadn't gotten that approved last year as part of last year's budget, I don't know that we could have done it next year and in the out years, because there's just so much uncertainty around municipal finances. But we've got a ribbon cutting we're planning tentatively for June 18th.
Okay.
Just got that confirmed. Hopefully there won't be any rain because we don't have a rain date yet.
Okay.
But that is, it's just a terrific project. And don't want to spill any beans, but I think the town may be in line for some awards for the design and work on an unbelievable project. Yeah.
That project's been coming we funded initially a design,
Yep, the
with
design
Public
work.
Works, and then the way it was planned out by Public Works and Engineering was to do it kind of staggered, so it didn't all hit at once.
Right.
And then last year we had the issue because there was some funding, we had to re-put it out there.
Put it out to bid again. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
but it worked out.
Yep.
And the same with the PAC. We had that kind of weird budget last
That's
year
another
on that
one.
too.
You're right. The Performing Arts Center, that's one of the things that, if you look at the projects across the town, obviously the Latimer project finished at the school, had a ribbon cutting there, absolutely, first-rate, state-of-the-art facility. I came in on the tail end. I was glad to be there to cut the ribbon and see what what a wonderful facility that was. And a lot of people deserve a lot of credit for the work over at Latimer, I think. But the Performing Arts Center is near and dear to my heart because, as you know, I've got a background in the arts and in the theater, and kind of grew up in the theater, in fact. And so, and the other thing I love about that, Wendy, is that it's a partnership between the Performing Arts Center, the state of Connecticut, and Simsbury. So we've got some money on the table. The state got, what was that, 900,000 or almost a million?
Yeah, almost a million.
Almost a million.
We put in $500,000 plus $350 for the bathrooms.
For the bathrooms.
So we're
for
close
the
to
public
the
restrooms.
same.
Right.
Yeah.
But anytime you can point to, that three-legged stool where you've got the private-public partnership, state dollars coming in, you're really leveraging what the town is able to do. And I can't wait to see that facility when it's done. It's going to be great.
It's going to be really exciting. And I gave the plug when Melissa was here. I interviewed Melissa for
She
another show.
played a big role in helping us get that funding.
Yep.
So we've got to say thanks very much to our state rep.
But what I was going to say is I gave a plug to the Ben Folds concert that's coming.
I just saw that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Are you going to that one?
I'm planning. I was going to buy a table, but the tickets were higher. So and there weren't as many tables left, so we may just rough it on the lawn and get a whole group together.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll go halvesies with you. We'll get a table. Let's do it.
Okay, so a couple other things with the pickleball courts,
Yep.
right? People have been waiting for those, and that was
Terrafil?
another that was a ARPA funded. We were
Right.
waiting for FEMA maps that have been very slow in coming.
Oh.
Sounds like we're going to hear on Monday night about some of the updates that we're planning.
Yeah, very excited about that because that project is actually moving. We authorized moving it forward even before we're coming to you on the 21st, which is next Monday now, just to give you a briefing. And our very own Tom Roy will be there to give the Board of Selectmen an update on that. But the shift in the plan to use the asphalt actually frees up some additional funding for some other things that you and your colleagues on the Board of Selectmen could sign on to, which is good. It's always good when you have a little extra cash to do some of the things that maybe didn't make it into the budget on the first cut. But the pickleball is great. It's going to be a big improvement.
Yeah, and we had also recently redid the backstop on the softball field there that I know some softball players were appreciative of.
Yeah.
And we also had done Weetog Park, and now we're doing the memorial backstop. We
Yeah.
approved that in our budget.
Yeah.
So we got a lot going on. I was going to also mention the new apartments are going to be going in next to the PAC, so we'll get some traction and action downtown.
Yeah.
Right?
Anything that adds density. I was just having this conversation with our planning folks, and you and I have a kind of a like opinion about this, but it's more about the density and the foot traffic and the people walking around and visiting our local shops and eateries that really is going to drive the economic development with a small e and a small d. Not these big apartment complexes that have been proposed, but a certain amount of density, mixed use, where you can have some retail and restaurants on the ground floor. That's always been my preference.
Well, we have such a nice downtown.
It's a beautiful downtown. It
Right.
really is, and it's walkable. We do have some vacancies, which obviously is something that our team and our volunteer board at the Economic Development Commission and some of the select board members particularly are involved in that. What can we do to bring more local small businesses to town and kind of fill these vacant spaces? So we're working on that.
Okay.
More to come.
Here's just throw in a couple. What's your favorite coffee? Are you a Dunkin' or a Starbucks person?
I'm a Starbucks person. I was just talking to planning about this because, of course, you got the new Starbucks going in up there.
Yes, a drive-through.
And with a drive-through, and of course, it's pretty proximate, shall we say, to Dunkin' Donuts. So
it is.
Right. So I think my answer to that question, Wendy, is going to be whichever drive-through line is a little less, because I can't spend hours in the drive-through line. So whoever's getting the line moving, that's where I'm going.
I know we're both big coffee drinkers.
We
I'm
are.
putting that out to the public. I'm a Dunkin' person, but I have grown fond of Starbucks cold brew with the cold foam on top. That's my next favorite.
I just stopped and picked up some Pike Place. I need something a little stronger.
It is stronger. You get a better kick with it.
Yeah.
And there's other good coffee spots where I will be heading after we talk here.
Your very own coffee spot. Well,
right
we'll
next
give them a
door.
plug right next door.
So a couple things. Let's transition into how did you get to Simsbury from Hartford to Poughkeepsie?
Wow, that's a story.
It's a big question, but I think people are interested in your a little bit personal about you.
I'll give you a little bit of background, some of which I know but I actually grew up in London, England, so I have I'm American, born in New York, but my parents divorced when I was very young. And they were both in the theater. That's why I have the theatrical background. I was raised in the theater. Dad went on to be a Tony Award-winning lighting designer, did a lot of Broadway shows.
Name the show, because it's in your office. You have the poster.
He did a couple of them.
Well, Into the Woods?
He did Into the Woods, but he won a Tony Award for Sunday in the Park with George. Which,
wow.
And, of course, Stephen Sondheim recently passed away, and so I'm just a shout-out to Stephen, because I think for almost every show he did on Broadway, he called my dad. And it was because of Stephen Sondheim that Dad's career took off. So our thanks to him. But he won a Tony for Sunday in the Park with George. But prior to that, he met my mother at Summerstock, somewhere in Pennsylvania. It doesn't exist anymore. And I'm an only child. So I always like to tell anybody that will listen that I am an actual product of the stage. I don't think I'd be here today if it wasn't for Mom and Dad meeting, backstage.
Were they were they
She was an actress, and he was a stagehand at the time, setting up the set. He was doing set design before he got into lighting design, and Mom was an actress. Yeah.
So how old were you when you moved to London?
I was 11, and so I grew up in London, and I came back to the States to go to college when I was 18, and I went to Albany State for undergrad in New York, And that was the New York connection. Dad lived in New York City. I wasn't much of a city person, so ended up in Albany. And spent probably maybe most of my career in New York State and some of it in Connecticut. Ended up as tax collector in Hartford for a while under 3 different mayors. In fact, I was there until just after Luke Bronin. Luke Bronin had won the race for mayor, and I was there for a little while with Luke and then left. And I took a job in Poughkeepsie, New York as their finance director. So it was a little bit of a promotion in municipal government, and I ran the finances of the city of Poughkeepsie.
So you left Hartford to go to Poughkeepsie?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, Poughkeepsie at the time had this. This is the city, not the town, for those who are aware of the difference. But had a $13 million general fund deficit. So if you can imagine, one of the most, I will correct that, it was the most fiscally stressed municipality in the state of New York at that time, under a ranking put out by the New York State Comptroller. And during my 8 years there, first as finance director and then promoted to city manager, and then ultimately as the mayor, we completely erased that $13 million deficit. We got the city's bond rating back above investment grade. And did some wonderful things. You were talking about ARPA. The city of Poughkeepsie got $20 million in ARPA, and by the time the city got that, I had been promoted as city manager. So had a lot of input at my level as city manager and then mayor on the deployment of the $20 million, and that was one of the things I became most proud of. And then when that gig ended, was looking for a new opportunity, and Simsbury came around. Yeah, well, it was somewhat of a return, because when I worked in Hartford, I lived in the Farmington Valley, lived in Avon. I didn't live in Simsbury, but certainly was familiar with the area. Had a lot of friends in town. Mm-hmm. And it was my wife who said, "Hey, look, the Simsbury job." And I was like, okay. And here I am. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, well. It was really lucky. It's a dream job. I've spent most of my professional life in municipalities that are really challenged in one area or not, typically financially distressed. And so coming to Simsbury, particularly later in my career, was really wonderful, and I've had a great time. I'm enjoying it.
But it's not as easy as it looks.
Oh, no.
Right?
In fact, some of the folks, my old colleagues said, "Oh, you're going to be a little bored, or the biggest issue will be some, lost." I was told at my going away party in Poughkeepsie that they had done some research on Simsbury. And I said, how's that possible? You've never even been to Simsbury. I was already kind of defensive of town. And they said, well, the biggest issue you're going to face is a loose bear from time to time. Well, I can tell you that you do have them, but that's not the only issue by any means. We're busy, as you know. Yeah,
you're very busy. And I was going to mention that we have a very engaged constituency in town.
Much
volunteers.
More so. Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's. I was just talking to somebody about that. The volunteerism in Simsbury. I've never seen anything like it, and I've worked in 6 or 7 different communities that have had various levels of engagement, community engagement. None of them come anywhere. Hands down, Simsbury is just amazing. The volunteerism is great. I would put it in the top 2 or 3, listing the biggest strengths of the town is the people that are here.
I always say that, I've lived here since '87. We ended up here randomly. We did not, my husband and I was from Bloomfield. I lived through in Hartford in apartments and stuff like that in my 20s. He's from Torrington. We ended up here, just randomly bought a house. We didn't think we could afford to live here.
Right.
And we've been here for 37 years. We've raised our kids here. And the one thing that I always say about Simsbury, regardless of what anybody thinks from the outside, is we all have a bond here. It's just like we've all grown up with the same surrounding, we just, everybody has a sense of community.
I got to interrupt you and tell you this.
Interrupt me.
So you're going to love this story, and forgive me if I've told you this before, but for everybody
they might not have heard.
Somebody asked me, what are the 2 most common things you hear in your office when somebody walks into the town manager's office at Town Hall? Well, what types of things bring people to the town manager's office? And I immediately laughed, and I said, without doubt, the top 2 things I hear are, do you know how long I've lived in town?
Oh.
and the answer is always, I've learned. It's now, I started 30. I used to start at 10. 30 years, sir. No, 40 years, right? So the first is always how long they've lived in town. And the second, a close second is, I served on the Board of Selectmen. and I'm not kidding at all. I've met so many people. And it made me think, one of the things that's going on in town right now is you've got the Charter Revision Commission looking at the charter. And one of the things that I think some of your colleagues might have presented, or somebody did, about changing the terms of electeds on the Board of Selectmen from 2 years to 4. And somebody asked me, what my opinion of that was. And I said, oh, definitely change it to 4. You've got, hundreds of people that have served probably because it's a 2-year term. So
that's true.
But it's pretty funny. There's so many people that have lived in town you've been here since the mid-'80s. I was a guest speaker, I think, at the Rotary Club recently, and just a way of jest and introduction, I asked the audience, who here has lived in town for more than 20 years? Everybody's hand went up. I said, who's lived here for more than 30 years? Nobody's hand went down. It was like one of those things. So then I switched tacks and I said, has anybody lived in town less than a year, or does anybody not live in town? And mine was the only hand
that so funny.
Stayed up. It was big. We had a little fun with that, but and I think that's what gives the town its special character.
As a base,
really. And the volunteerism is, and everybody knows everybody. It's really a small town. I think that'll bring me to the next topic here, which is small town but facing big city challenges, right? And that's really the key that we all worry about.
Well, people are, it's getting harder and harder to pay property taxes.
Yeah.
And if we don't get all the mandates filled from the state, we have to hit the taxpayers for that.
Right.
We don't know what's coming at the federal level. So we did hear from people at our public hearing that, not just a handful, but that actually came and spoke up about their taxes. So we are aware of that because, it hits, I'll just say I'm a resident too. We're all 6 of us on the board are residents. We're all facing that. We're all different ages, different levels with our kids. But people don't really want to move because where are you going to go? Unless you're going south. Where's better?
Right.
Maybe a little better weather.
Maybe the beach.
Yeah, our weather's been crappy.
It might have been when I was interviewing, or maybe my wife had asked me, where would you want to work if not Simsbury? And it was interesting because the other communities I mentioned were Bermuda. I think I mentioned Bermuda. I think I mentioned Clearwater, Florida. More of the vacation spots. But Simsbury is the spot.
So you have family. You have a new grandchild, or
I have a new granddaughter, Jillian. Yeah, I have 2 sons, Brian and Kevin. They're 5 years apart, but they both live in Boston, which I think I've shared with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm so fortunate that they're not on separate coasts, because can you imagine, as a parent, one kid in San Diego and one in Boston would not have been ideal, especially going through COVID and the trouble with traveling these days. It's not fun to fly across the country anymore, I've learned. It used to be fun. When I was growing up in England, I used to, my dad lived in New York and mom lived in London, used to fly back and forth for every holiday. And boy, didn't I look forward to flying back in those days, the
meals.
The Pan Am 747s and the TWAs. You got to go visit the cockpit and, now I wouldn't want to get on a plane if I didn't absolutely have to. It just seems like that the golden age of travel is well behind us. But anyway,
I'm happy to travel.
You can travel. I'm going to live
like to travel.
Not
a lot of opportunities, but my kids both also live on this coast. And I get that, but sometimes it'd be nice to have an excuse to go out to San Diego or
Well, I'll tell
somewhere.
you one more thing that's really cool. I have 2 sons, didn't have the daughter that I would have liked to have had. And so I have two wonderful sons, 3 granddaughters. So somebody was listening that, wanted to have the daughter. So 3 granddaughters and 2 sons. So I'm truly blessed.
And I want to say they're all very cute. And the pictures that I've seen, they seem to have a family resemblance to Mark Nelson.
Well, I'll take a little bit of credit.
Yeah, they're all very cute, very sweet. So here's another question.
I've got one more thing.
Oh, sure.
My oldest granddaughter, the first one, Winnie, her real name is Winifred. And she was named after my mother, who lives with my wife and I. She's Wendy. And it is her 89th birthday today. So happy birthday, Mom.
Nice.
89 years old, Winifred. And her great-granddaughter, her first great-granddaughter, was named after her.
That's really nice. And you are a dedicated son, which I think is really...
She wouldn't say so, because I brought her an Easter bunny yesterday, and I got in trouble. I didn't take the time to look at it at Stop and Shop, and it was white chocolate. She does not like it.
You need to go to Munson's. I'm not doing an advertisement, but they have the best chocolate.
Right.
You can get that at Fitzgerald's.
I'm going there right after this interview.
Okay, because I've bought in little chocolate balls there
yeah.
that we've eaten quite a bit of in Town
true.
Hall.
Yeah, I've
we
gained
all
a few
like chocolate. I know. Yeah, Mark is very good about providing snacks to the Board of Selectmen. if we have an executive session or something like that.
Bring the snacks. That's
So
I
we
learned
do.
that a long time ago.
Speaking of the Board of Selectmen, how do you like your Board of Selectmen?
Well, I love them all. I mean, they really, you know what I like is that unlike, and I've worked in larger communities, like Poughkeepsie had 9 council members, Hartford, I think
Yikes.
also 9, so this is 6. And I got to tell you a quick joke. So now Senator Rollison, who was the mayor in Poughkeepsie who hired me, he asked me recently, he called me up and said, how are you doing in Simsbury? And I want to get this correct. I said to him, Rob, I'm doing really well. I love it here. I said, it's a third less stress. He said, a third less stress? How do you figure that? And I said, it's only 6 members on the board, not 9. I said, you could do the math. And he laughed. He got a big kick out of it.
That is very funny.
Right. But it is true that from a town manager or a city administrator role, that typically a lot of what we're doing is engagement with our board, whether it be a common council or in this case, the Board of Selectmen. And so that's where a lot of the work comes from. It's a lot of the back and forth and the engagement comes. And I've really enjoyed it here because your board is really engaged and really cool.
Yeah, it's it's a mixed group. It's
well,
very
you all
fun.
have your separate sort of...
We all different
yeah,
personalities.
which is good, because if you've got one area, you can go to this individual or that individual and get a good answer. So it's a cohesive group.
It is pretty cohesive, and it's a new group. So I think we're all having a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes if people think that we're arguing or back and forth, we all are doing our jobs. We're representing town hall and our staff while we're representing. We have to represent everybody. You have to represent everybody. So we all are fighting to do what we think is the right thing.
I think one of the things that everybody loves to do, unfortunately, is they overblow conflict, and you really can't overblow that. I think it's debate, it's dialogue, it's good conversations, and I enjoy it, especially with you.
And I was going to say, that when we've had discussions, on agenda items or things, if we disagree, it's always ends up being very collaborative.
Yeah.
And we're always still friends at the end. Hopefully we keep that going, that we have a good relationship, because it's a working relationship.
Yeah.
And we're doing the best we can for
Absolutely.
everybody.
And I everybody knows we're not going to agree every single day about every issue, but I think one of the things I like about this role is that I'm not a policymaker. It's not, I run the town. I'm not, I don't have to get in your lane, you don't have to get in my lane. And where they meet is sometimes a bit of a gray area, and we wrestle with that, you and I.
We do.
But the public doesn't necessarily know that that's even going on behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, it's a wonderful community, and you're doing a great job.
Oh,
so,
thank you. Well, so are you.
Well,
let's get a couple personal questions.
Uh-oh.
So, what do you do in your free time?
Now, Wendy, you know that I can't say there's much free time because you've kept
That's
me pretty,
true. You're working. You got you working like a.
You've kept me pretty busy. My wife and I just bought a new home, so we are, unpacking. And I think one of the things that you like to do as you get older and you buy, hopefully what will be your forever home. You try to you want to throw as much out as you can and get rid of as much.
Yes.
Do the kids want it or not? If you don't want it,
they don't want it, right?
They don't want it.
Nobody wants anything.
Maybe they want this desk or they want that dresser. And I must have asked all of my kids, and my wife Lisa has 2 kids by her first marriage as well. So between us 4. And what I've noticed is nobody wants anything.
Yep.
And so it's more frequent runs to the dump and things like that. So my free time, at least for the last few months, has been weeding out some 30 or 40 years of acquired things and trying to downsize a little bit, and painting and just tinkering around the house, things like that.
So do you have any pets or anything at home?
I have a few cats, yes. That's an interesting story, too. They came with me from Poughkeepsie. They were actually feral cats that I adopted, out of necessity because they were coming in whether I wanted them to come in or not. So, we started by naming them. That was our first mistake. And so we have Gaga, Cher, and Pepper.
Oh, you have 3 cats.
3 cats, yes.
Why is Pepper not a
well, because I
diva?
I couldn't think of another diva at the time that Lisa and I could agree on. But we both loved Lady Gaga and Cher, so it was really cool to name the 2 cats Gaga and Cher. They don't sing, but they do get in. I do like trouble. The names. Yeah, it's kind of cute.
It's tough coming up with pet names.
Yeah. There were 2 other feral cats that we named that we gave away to other homes. We had named them respectively Winston and Salem, after one of our favorite towns down in the South.
Or
Salem.
Winston-Salem cigarettes in the old days.
Could do it that way as well, yeah. So we have great pictures of Winston and Salem. They were siblings from the same litter, and we found them homes before we came, thank God.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. So another question I've asked, and I'll probably use this question if I get renewed as a joke.
I heard your show is up for renewal.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to make this a good one so that we get good ratings here. How about any bucket list items?
Well, I was criticizing travel of late because it's not what it used to be. But I've promised my wife a trip to Rome, and we've been putting it off. So I would have to say there's some travel spots that are in my future that I've been to before, but she hasn't.
Okay.
And I think you went to Italy recently.
I went last year, like right
I think
now.
You're the one that put it in my head. I remember I had just came on board at the time, and you were jetting off to Italy, and I think I probably put it on my bucket list at that time. But there are some places in the world that I'd like to get to again, or maybe for the first time. It's interesting. My kids, Brian and Kevin, had pooled their financial resources to get a spot for us to go to for what was then my 60th birthday, which was in May of 2020. And they had gotten a beautiful villa complete with a butler in the Cayman Islands. I think it was the Cayman Islands for 4 or 5 days. Wasn't as expensive as it might sound, but it was a wonderful trip. It was all planned, prepaid, and we were looking forward to it. May of 2020, of course. That didn't happen.
I know.
Because COVID hit the world in March, and so that trip was put off until my 70th birthday. So I've got a few years to wait.
Oh, you got to wait now.
I got to wait and survive, but we're going to the Cayman Islands as a family to celebrate my 70th. So.
Well, don't rush it.
I'm not rushing it.
I just turned 69. I'm pushing that off. I'm not even going to think about that, although... People, us boomers think we're younger than we are.
Yeah.
I guess that's what happens.
I was just reading recently, it might have even been the other day, that travel for Americans is getting a little more challenging in some of the places of the world that I would be interested in going to. So I'm a little worried, and we'll be watching, what the future holds for that, right? You can't just get up and go like you went to. Got to think about these things a little bit more. So.
Well, I was gonna mention I had the 2020 experience because we were going to Amsterdam.
Oh, were you really?
And it was like March 9th, and I was like, oh, what should we cancel now? And then we canceled it, and then like the next week the world shut down. We did end up going in 22.
Did you really?
But I would say if you go to Rome, which we did last year, to go to Venice too. We did a two-city trip, and it was very easy, and we took the train.
Yeah.
But Venice, we love Venice.
Yeah, my mother spent a lot of time in Italy, and of course in her days living in England, and she always said if you go to Venice, you go by train. Because it's a visual,
it's only 3 or 4 hours. It wasn't nothing.
But it's so beautiful to go get there and arrive by train is
just it was cool.
Yeah.
And so we had a great time. We ate a lot.
Let me ask you a question. Where are you going next? What's your upcoming plan?
Oh, I have a good one.
There's something going on, isn't there?
I have a almost 9-month-old puppy at home. So we've done some staggered trips right now, but we haven't planned a big trip yet for later this year. But I am going to my daughter's bachelorette in March. Max will stay home.
Where?
We're going to Vegas, and we're going to see the Dead at the Sphere.
The Dead?
Yes.
Now wait a minute. That's not even fair. You went to Italy. Now you're going to. Didn't you go to see the Eagles?
Yes,
too?
and I saw the Eagles in November because we had a trip to Vegas.
I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but
that's okay because I love talking about going to Vegas. We go with my siblings a lot every year, every couple of years. But we went in November. The Eagles were announced at the Sphere. We're obviously from the 70s, love the Eagles.
Me
so
too.
we saw them. And you've told me the Eagles are your favorite band.
They I don't know if they are today, but they were. I grew up obviously in the same era that you did. I'm a little younger. I'll get that in there.
Yeah, thank you.
So I saw the Eagles live in London. I think it was at the Palladium in the 70s. And then later, it must have been the 90s, I saw them live in Florida at the Orange Bowl. And I don't really remember the first one at the Palladium that well, but the one at the Orange Bowl, I remember was pouring rain and nobody left. They just were, it was magnificent. And so yeah, I grew up being a bit of an Eagles fan myself.
So again, I'm talking about myself a little, but I saw the Eagles the first time in '72 at Dillon Stadium, which is now where the Hartford, the soccer field plays.
Yep.
And then I saw them at the Palace Theater in 1973, and we were in the third row with my girlfriend. So I have a history, but the Sphere is fun. If you get a chance to go, I will report back on the Dead. Yeah. I know Steve Antonio has seen them at least probably 6 times there already.
I would have guessed that. Yeah,
he's a Deadhead. Yeah. So I guess we're pretty much done. Do you have anything else you want to add to the conversation that I forgot to ask?
No, just want to thank you, Wendy, for everything you've done and for giving me the opportunity to come to Simsbury. You know, you were on the prior board you and Heather Getz both supported bringing me here, along with I think the 4 or maybe 3 of the other board members. So for that, I'm grateful. It's been a great opportunity. I've enjoyed working it, and I love the community. So thanks very much for having me.
I hope that people got to know a little bit more about you by listening to this, because we get to talk a lot and on a personal level. And he does have an open door policy, so
everybody's welcome. Stop by the town manager's office anytime.
Might have candy.
Might have coffee.
Bring him a coffee, but from Starbucks.
From Starbucks. No, seriously though, we love that, and people stop by all the time, and we encourage them to do that. So
thanks again, Mark. It was really fun.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government come together.